A shadow moves with impossible speed across the rain-soaked moor. For decades, a phantom predator has stalked the imagination of England, a creature known only as the Beast of Bodmin-Moor. This is the true story of a legend that refuses to die, a mystery woven from ancient folklore, modern sightings, and cutting-edge forensic science. We will separate the fact from the fiction, revealing how a local tale became a national obsession. You will discover the startling evidence that suggests this is more than just a myth, and the official reports that claim it cannot possibly exist. What secret does this fog-shrouded landscape hold, and why have so many people seen something they cannot explain? What does it mean when a modern world still creates its own monsters? Bodmin-Moor is a land that seems to exist outside of time, a sprawling expanse of granite tors and boggy marshland in the heart of Cornwall. Its beauty is raw and untamed, a canvas of muted greens and grays where the weather can shift from serene sunshine to a thick, disorienting fog in mere moments. This is not a gentle landscape. It is ancient, sculpted by glaciers and inhabited for thousands of years, with the crumbling stone circles and hut foundations of Bronze Age settlers still dotting the terrain. These silent ruins are the first clue to the moor's enduring mystery, a place where the past feels unnervingly present. It is a land of deep valleys known locally as bottoms, and treacherous mires that can swallow a sheep or something larger without a trace. This inherent wildness, this feeling of an untamed pocket in a modern world, is the fertile ground from which legends naturally sprout. For centuries, the moor has been described as a haunted place, not by any single ghost, but by an atmosphere of profound isolation and whispered history. It is a landscape that encourages the mind to see shapes in the mist and to interpret distant animal calls as something more sinister. When you stand on that open ground, with the wind whipping across the gorse and the visibility dropping to nothing, the idea of a large, unseen predator watching from the rocks does not feel so far-fetched. The environment itself seems to demand a resident monster, a spectral guardian for its lonely, beautiful, and often dangerous expanse. This perfect storm of geography and folklore set the stage, but it was a series of chilling encounters in the late 20th century that would truly bring the beast to life. Long before the name Beast of Bodmin-Moor was ever spoken, the British countryside was already whispering of other shadows. The idea of a large, non-native cat roaming the land is not a modern invention. In fact, the British Isles were once home to a native big cat, the Eurasian lynx, which prowled these ancient woods for thousands of years before being hunted to extinction centuries ago. Its ghost seems to have never fully left the collective memory, but the story becomes more tangled with the arrival of exotic pets. Following the Second World War, a new fashion emerged among the wealthy for keeping unusual animals. Leopards, pumas, and ocelots became living status symbols. Yet when the Dangerous Wild Animals Act was passed in 1976, making private ownership of such creatures far more difficult and expensive, a dark rumor began to circulate. The legend says that some owners, unwilling or unable to comply with the new law, simply released their animals into the wild. Could the moors of Cornwall have become an unwilling sanctuary for a menagerie of abandoned predators? This theory provides a chillingly plausible origin for a flesh and blood beast. Yet the soil of Cornwall is steeped in even older myths. For generations, locals have spoken of phantom black dogs, massive spectral hounds with glowing eyes that haunt lonely lanes and ancient crossroads. These apparitions, often seen as omens of death, share an eerie resemblance to the descriptions of a large, dark feline. Is it possible that the modern sightings are not of a new creature at all, but a new form for a very old fear, a shape-shifting legend adapting to a new era? The stage was set, the cultural ingredients all in place, waiting for a single spark to ignite a full-blown mystery. That spark finally came in 1983, from a pair of witnesses who were not given to flights of fancy. A farmer and his son were checking their livestock near the village of Balventer, a place surrounded by the moor's most unforgiving terrain. What they saw was no fleeting shadow in the fog. It was a large, black feline creature, powerful and low to the ground, moving with the unmistakable fluid grace of a predator. It was not a dog, nor a sheep, nor anything they had ever encountered on their land before. The animal paused, turning to look directly at them, its eyes holding an intelligence that felt alien and deeply unsettling. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished into the dense undergrowth. This was not a story told in a pub late at night. It was a sober, immediate report from credible land working people who knew the difference between a known animal and something completely unknown. The local newspaper, the Cornish Guardian, picked up the story. The report did not just describe a strange animal. It gave the phenomenon a name that would echo for decades to come. They called it the Beast of Bodmin-Moor. That name was a catalyst. It transformed an isolated, peculiar event into a public spectacle. Other newspapers across the country seized upon the story, printing dramatic headlines that asked if a phantom cat was stalking the English countryside. The public imagination was instantly captured. Here was a tangible mystery, a real-life monster story unfolding not in some distant jungle, but in the heart of rural Britain. The 1980s sighting did not just report a creature. It created a template, a specific image of a large black panther-like cat that would be repeated in hundreds of subsequent encounters. It gave people a name for the shape they had seen in the mist, and in doing so, it invited everyone to look for it. The legend was no longer lurking in the shadows of folklore. It was out in the open, and it was hungry for attention. Once the name was out there, the sightings began to multiply with startling speed. The 1990s became the decade of the beast, a period of near-epidemic hysteria where it seemed everyone on Bodmin Moor had a story to tell. Farmers reported finding their livestock mutilated in ways they found deeply unsettling, with injuries that did not match the work of local dogs or foxes. One farmer near the village of Warlegan discovered a ewe with its throat torn out. The carcass dragged a considerable distance, a feat of strength attributed to no ordinary animal. Tourists driving along the lonely moorland roads would slam on their brakes, convinced they had seen a large, black, panther-like form slinking across the asphalt in their headlights, its eyes catching the light with an unearthly glow before it vanished into the darkness. A local postman on his early morning rounds swore he saw the creature drinking from a stream, its muscular shoulders rippling as it lifted its head to stare directly at him, completely unafraid. The consistency in these reports is what gave them such weight. It was not just one person's word against another. Dozens of independent witnesses from all walks of life were describing the same animal. A creature roughly the size of a Labrador, but longer and lower to the ground, with a jet black coat, a long, thick tail, and that unforgettable pair of piercing, luminous eyes. This was not a collection of random monster stories. This was a pattern, a detailed composite sketch being drawn by an entire community, and that pattern lent a powerful air of credibility to the claims. The sheer volume of encounters created a feedback loop of fear and fascination, turning the moor into a hunting ground for both the phantom cat and the truth seekers desperate to find it. The legend finally seemed to have a face, or at least a shape, captured in a few seconds of grainy, shaking video. 1995 delivered what hundreds of eyewitness accounts could not, a piece of tangible evidence that could be played and replayed. A tourist, simply enjoying the stark scenery of the moor, noticed a large, dark animal moving along a distant hillside. He raised his camcorder, and for a brief moment, the Beast of Bodmin Moor was recorded. The footage is exactly what you would expect from a frantic, long-distance recording, shaky and indistinct. Yet within that blurry frame, a creature is undeniably present. It moves with a fluid, slinking gait, its body long and low, its tail thick and trailing behind it. It does not look like a domestic cat, nor does it move like a dog. For a public hungry for proof, this was it. The video was broadcast on national news, and suddenly, the beast was not just a story in a local paper. It was in living rooms across the country. This was the closest anyone had come to definitive proof. The grainy footage became the cornerstone of the legend, a visual anchor for every story told about the phantom cat. But could a few seconds of video truly hold up under scientific scrutiny? Or would it unravel under the cold, hard light of analysis? The video was immediately subjected to intense examination. Zoologists and big cat specialists were brought in to give their professional opinions. Some experts argued the animal's proportions, the length of its back, and the way it carried its tail were highly consistent with a large feline, possibly a puma or a leopard. They pointed to the musculature visible in its shoulders and the sheer size of the creature relative to the surrounding vegetation. These analyses gave the believers a powerful new voice, a scientific backing for their claims. Yet for every voice in support, there was another ready to debunk it. Skeptical analysts proposed a far more mundane explanation, that the video simply showed a large domestic cat, a Maine Coon or similar breed, filmed from an angle and distance that created a powerful illusion of scale. They argued that without any objects of known size in the immediate foreground for direct comparison, accurately judging the animal's true dimensions was impossible. The very graininess that made the footage so compelling was also its greatest weakness, obscuring crucial details that could have settled the debate. This fundamental split in interpretation meant the video could never be the final proof so many hoped for. Instead of solving the mystery, the 1995 footage amplified it. It became a Rorschach test, where people saw exactly what they wanted to see. Believers saw a powerful predator, a confirmation of their deepest convictions. Skeptics saw a trick of perspective, a case of wishful thinking captured on tape. The video's true legacy was not in providing answers, but in cementing the beast of Bodmin-Moor as a permanent fixture of British popular culture. It proved that in the age of video, a legend could become more real than ever, and yet remain just as elusive. Just as the video footage divided opinion, another discovery on the moor promised to deliver the concrete evidence everyone was waiting for. In 1995, the same year the famous video was shot, a walker stumbled upon a startling find along the banks of the River Fowey, a large cat skull. This was not a fragment of bone, but a nearly complete skull with formidable canine teeth, clearly belonging to a substantial predator. The initial reaction was one of pure triumph. Here was the smoking gun, the final, undeniable proof that a big cat was living and had died on Bodmin Moor. The media erupted with sensational headlines, proclaiming the mystery solved and the legend confirmed. It felt like the end of a long hunt. The skull was immediately sent to the experts at the British Museum for a formal analysis, a process that would subject it to the most rigorous scientific scrutiny. The entire nation seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the official verdict that would finally validate decades of fear and fascination. The examination was thorough, involving zoologists and specialists who studied every minute detail of the bone structure. Their conclusion, however, was a devastating blow to the believers. The scientists identified the skull as belonging to a young male leopard, but it was not an animal that had ever roamed the British countryside alive. The key evidence was the method of its death. The skull showed clear-cut marks from a skilled taxidermist's blade, the kind of precise incisions made when preparing an animal for a trophy rug. This was not the skull of the beast of Bodmin Moor. It was a discarded piece of a leopard skin rug, likely imported from Africa many years before. The official report explained that the skull was probably thrown into the river, or had fallen in accidentally, and had been naturally cleaned by the water and scavengers before being found. For the skeptics, this was the ultimate confirmation of their views. They saw it as definitive proof that the entire phenomenon was built on a foundation of misidentification and hysteria, where even the most promising evidence crumbled under proper examination. Yet, for the dedicated believers, the story of the skull did not end the debate. It simply deepened the intrigue. They asked a new and compelling question. If this skull was a discarded trophy, how many other exotic animals had been imported and then carelessly disposed of in the British countryside? The discovery did not prove a big cat was living on the moor, but it did prove that leopard parts were physically present there. This fueled a different kind of theory, one that suggested the real beast might be a descendant of other released or abandoned animals, its origins still rooted in that post-war trade in exotic pets. The skull, rather than closing the case, became a symbol of the mystery's stubborn refusal to be pinned down, a piece of evidence that somehow managed to fuel both skepticism and belief in equal measure. Footprints in the soft mud offered another tantalizing piece of the puzzle. Over the years, investigators and intrigued locals have carefully poured plaster into impressions found along riverbanks and muddy trails, creating permanent records of what appeared to be the tracks of a large cat. These casts were not small, like those of a domestic cat or even a badger. They showed the classic rounded shape of a feline pad, often without visible claw marks, a key indicator that distinguished them from the tracks of dogs, which typically show their claws. Some of the most compelling casts measured nearly 4 inches across, suggesting an animal of substantial size and weight. Alongside these prints, other fragments of evidence were collected. Tufts of coarse black fur, snagged on barbed wire fences in isolated locations, were sent for analysis. Farmers presented the carcasses of sheep and ponies, pointing to injuries that seemed too precise and powerful for the local fox population, often citing throat bites and a distinct lack of the messy feeding patterns typical of dogs. Each of these findings felt like a direct clue, a physical trace left behind by the phantom. The sheer volume of this evidence created a compelling, almost undeniable narrative for those who experienced it firsthand. It seemed impossible that so many different types of proof could all be misleading. Yet, when these very items were subjected to official scrutiny, the clear picture often became clouded with doubt. The Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food launched a formal investigation in the 1990s, a direct response to the public pressure and the growing legend. Their scientists examined the plaster casts, the fur samples, and the accounts of livestock predation. The official conclusion was a stark disappointment for believers. The paw prints, while large, were deemed inconclusive, without a clear, scale-setting object in the photograph of the cast, or a perfect set of prints leading to an identifiable animal. Experts could not rule out distortions caused by weather, melting, or the simple passage of time on a soft substrate. The tufts of black fur, upon microscopic analysis in a laboratory, were consistently identified as belonging to common animals like domestic dogs or badgers. The sheep carcasses presented the most complex part of the puzzle. While the injuries were certainly dramatic, the official report suggested they were entirely consistent with the work of known predators, particularly when those predators were acting as a pack. A group of dogs, or even a particularly large and powerful fox, could inflict the damage described, especially on vulnerable or sickly animals. The report ultimately stated there was no verifiable evidence for the existence of a big cat on Bodmin Moor. This definitive dismissal from a government body should have ended the debate, but for many, it did nothing of the sort. The official investigation was seen by believers not as a refutation, but as a failure of imagination, an attempt to force a wild and unexplained phenomenon into the narrow confines of known science. They argued that the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. A single, elusive predator could easily avoid the clumsy efforts of a short-term official inquiry. The plaster casts may have been inconclusive to a lab technician in London, but to the farmer who found them in his field, they were as real as the rain. This fundamental disconnect between local experience and official analysis created a permanent rift, ensuring that the mystery would live on, not in spite of the evidence, but because of it. The official report landed with a dull, bureaucratic thud, a stark contrast to the roaring drama of the headlines. After months of investigation, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food delivered its final verdict in 1995. They stated in unambiguous terms that no verifiable evidence existed for a population of big cats on Bodmin Moor. The report systematically dismantled the key pieces of evidence. The livestock killings were attributed to native predators like dogs and foxes. The famed video footage was dismissed as inconclusive, and the physical traces like fur and paw prints were either misidentified or lacked the definitive provenance required for scientific proof. This was not a mystery anymore, according to the government. It was a case of mass misidentification fueled by local folklore and media sensationalism. For the ministry, the case was officially closed. The public reaction, however, was anything but settled. For the farmers who had seen their stock torn apart, and the countless witnesses who had stared into those luminous eyes, the report felt like a profound dismissal of their lived experience. It was not just a denial of a creature, it was an invalidation of their own senses and their intimate knowledge of the land. How could dozens of independent accounts, all describing the same animal, be so completely wrong? The media, which had so eagerly built up the legend, now had a new angle, the story of a government out of touch with its rural citizens. Headlines shifted from asking if the beast was real to questioning whether official investigators had even been looking in the right places, or if they had truly wanted to find anything at all. The official closure did not extinguish the mystery. Instead, it created two parallel truths. One was the documented, evidence-based world of the official report, a world where the beast could not exist. The other was the experiential world of those who lived on the moor, a world where the beast was as real as the granite under their feet. This divide ensured the legend would not die in a filing cabinet in London. It would simply retreat back into the mist, waiting for its next witness. Perhaps the most compelling explanation for the beast is also the most straightforward. It is a refugee from a human world that no longer wanted it. The passage of the Dangerous Wild Animals Act in 1976 was a landmark moment, a legislative effort to curb the private ownership of exotic predators. But laws cannot erase what already exists. The act forced owners to apply for expensive licenses and meet stringent safety requirements for their animals. For some, the choice was stark: comply with a costly new bureaucracy, find a reputable zoo that would take the creature, or take the easy way out. The dark whisper that has persisted for decades is that some owners simply drove to the edge of a remote place like Bodmin-Moor, opened a cage, and let their problem vanish into the night. This is not mere speculation. There is a chilling precedent. In 1976, the very year the act came into force, a female puma was captured alive in Scotland near the village of Cornish. Nicknamed Felicity, she had likely been living wild for some time. Her capture proved two things beyond any doubt. First, that large non-native cats could not only survive but thrive in the British climate. Second, that the practice of releasing them was a tangible reality. If it happened in the Scottish Highlands, why not on the moors of Cornwall? The theory gains even more traction when you consider the landscape itself. Bodmin-Moor is not a gentle parkland. It is a vast, sparsely populated wilderness offering everything a solitary predator needs. Its valleys provide perfect cover, its streams and rivers a constant source of fresh water. The moor supports a huge population of rabbits, hares, and deer, a veritable buffet for a skilled hunter. A released puma or leopard would find itself in an environment not so different from its native habitats, with an abundance of prey and very few natural threats. It would have no reason to ever show itself to the people it instinctively learned to avoid. Could such an animal not just survive, but establish a breeding population? This is the crucial question that elevates the theory from a lone escapee to a potential origin for a legend. A single animal would eventually grow old and die, its story ending with it. But for the sightings to persist over decades, a breeding pair would be necessary. The vast, trackless expanse of the moor could certainly conceal a very small, very elusive population. They would be masters of stealth, active primarily at dawn and dusk, their territories spanning many square miles. Encounters would be rare, fleeting events, exactly as the reports describe. The sheer feasibility of this scenario is what makes it so enduring. It requires no supernatural intervention, no ancient curses, just a series of human decisions with unintended consequences that created a ghost, a flesh and blood phantom perfectly adapted to its hidden kingdom. But what if the beast is not an escaped exotic, but a native son of the soil returned from the grave? A far more speculative theory suggests the phantom cat of Bodmin is not a newcomer at all, but a relic, a small, tenacious population of Britain's original big cats that has survived in secret for centuries. The idea centers on the Eurasian lynx, a creature that once roamed these islands as a native predator for thousands of years before being hunted to extinction, likely by the medieval period. Could a handful of these elusive cats have held on in the most remote and inaccessible corners of the British Isles, with Bodmin-Moor serving as their final redoubt? The ecological argument for this is surprisingly compelling. The lynx is a ghost by nature, a solitary and supremely cautious animal that avoids human contact at all costs. It is a master of stealth, perfectly capable of living in forested and moorland habitats without ever being seen. Bodmin-Moor, with its vast, empty spaces and dense, hidden valleys, could provide the perfect sanctuary for such a creature. The prey base is certainly there, with a booming population of roe deer, the lynx's preferred food, alongside an abundance of rabbits and hares. From a purely biological standpoint, the land could support them. Historically, the case is far more difficult to prove. There is no fossil or bone evidence to suggest the lynx survived beyond the early modern period in Britain. The historical record is a silent witness to its absence. Yet proponents of this theory point to a long and persistent thread of folklore. For generations, rural communities across Britain have spoken of mysterious, big cats that were not panthers or pumas, but something else entirely, creatures woven into local legend long before the exotic pet trade ever began. Are these stories simply misremembered tales of the long-lost lynx, a cultural echo of a predator that never truly left the collective memory? The arguments against this idea, however, are formidable. How could even the most secretive animal leave no definitive trace for hundreds of years? No carcass has ever been found. No lynx kitten has ever been seen. No clear, undeniable photograph exists, despite the millions of camera phones now carried into the wilderness. For a breeding population to persist, it would need a certain minimum number of individuals to maintain genetic diversity, making total invisibility for centuries a near statistical impossibility. The leap from a few scattered escapees to a relict population is a vast one, requiring a suspension of disbelief that challenges the very foundations of zoology. Yet this theory touches on something deeper than mere evidence. It speaks to a longing for a wilder, more untamed Britain, a land where ancient nature has not been entirely tamed and catalogued. The idea that a piece of our primordial fauna could still be out there, watching from the misty tors, is a powerful and romantic notion. It suggests that some mysteries are not just about what was released, but about what never truly left. Yet for some, the search for a flesh and blood explanation misses the point entirely. The true nature of the beast of Bodmin-Moor might not be biological, but supernatural, a being woven from the very fabric of the land's oldest stories. Long before the first big cat was ever imported, Cornish folklore spoke of the puka, a cunning and powerful spirit known as a shapeshifter. This entity could take on many forms, from a dark horse with glowing eyes to a shaggy black dog, or indeed, a sleek and predatory cat. It was a creature of the threshold, guarding the wild places and appearing to travelers at crossroads, often as a trickster or an omen. Could the modern beast be this ancient puka, simply adopting a new, contemporary form that resonates with our times, a panther for the post-industrial age? This idea suggests the creature is not an animal to be tracked or tagged, but a spiritual manifestation, as old as the granite tors themselves. Another esoteric interpretation views the beast not as a spirit, but as an elemental force. In this reading, the creature is a guardian of the land itself, an earth elemental given form. Bodmin-Moor is a place of immense, raw power, its geology forged in fire and sculpted by ice. The deep, silent valleys and rushing streams seem to hold a palpable energy, a presence that many visitors and locals alike have felt. An elemental being would be a physical expression of that wild, untamable energy, a protector of the moor's sacred solitude. It would explain why the creature is so often seen yet never caught, why it leaves traces that evaporate under scrutiny. It is not a being of flesh that can be pinned down, but a phenomenon of place, appearing when the land itself feels threatened or when the balance between the human and the wild is disturbed. Its appearances at the edges of farms could be read not as predation, but as a warning, a reminder of an older ownership. Perhaps the most intriguing supernatural theory proposes that the beast of Bodmin-moor is a thought form, a tulpa created by the sheer power of collective belief. This concept suggests that intense, focused human thought and emotion can, under the right conditions, coalesce into a seemingly physical entity. The moor, with its ancient atmosphere and history of myth, provides the perfect psychic canvas. For generations, people have feared the dark and lonely places, telling stories of what might lurk there. In the 20th century, those vague fears found a specific focus, a name, and a shape. The constant media attention, the thousands of conversations, the intense concentration of human expectation upon this one patch of land could have effectively breathed life into the legend. The beast would be a self-sustaining psychic construct, growing stronger with every new sighting, every newspaper article, every whispered story. It becomes real because we have all agreed to believe in it, and in the charged landscape of the moor, that belief takes on a life of its own. This would explain why the evidence is always just out of reach, why it feels so real to the witness in the moment, yet leaves no permanent trace. It is a ghost, but a ghost born from the living, a shared dream given claws and glowing eyes, forever haunting the border between our imagination and the world we perceive. Our minds are powerful pattern recognition engines, constantly shaping the chaos of sensory input into a coherent world. This very strength, however, can become a doorway for illusion. The human brain is hardwired to see faces in clouds and figures in the shadows, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. On Bodmin-moor, where the light is low and the fog plays tricks, this instinct goes into overdrive. A dark rock formation in the periphery, a stump of weathered gorse, even the fluid movement of a large badger crossing a road can be transformed in a fleeting glance. The mind, primed by local legend and a dozen news reports, instantly connects the dots. It fills in the gaps, completing the shape of the beast from a collection of ambiguous fragments. That is not a stray Labrador retrieving a stick from the heather. It is a panther, low to the ground and moving with purpose. The suggestion has already been planted, and the brain obligingly makes it real. This is not a sign of foolishness, but a fundamental feature of human perception. We see what we expect to see, especially in an environment that feels inherently mysterious. The moor itself becomes a collaborator in the illusion, its shifting landscapes providing an endless supply of raw material for our imaginations to sculpt. When dozens or even hundreds of people experience this same cognitive leap independently, it creates a powerful collective reality. This is where psychology introduces another potent force, mass hysteria. It is a social contagion, a shared anxiety that amplifies individual uncertainties into a communal certainty. One credible sighting reported in the newspaper validates the next person's fleeting glimpse. A neighbor's story about a mutilated sheep makes you listen more intently to the noises outside your own window at night. The phenomenon builds upon itself, a snowball effect of fear and fascination. What begins as a single strange event becomes a wave, where the desire to be part of the story, or the fear of being its next victim, overwhelms cautious skepticism. People start looking for the beast, and in a landscape like Bodmin-moor, you will almost certainly find something that fits the description. The large black domestic cat sunning itself on a distant wall becomes, in the telling, a creature of immense proportions. The roe deer startled into a panicked run is reinterpreted as the beast itself in flight. The power of suggestion is so profound that it can alter memory itself, refining and enlarging the details of a brief encounter until it aligns perfectly with the established legend. This does not mean the witnesses are lying. They are reporting their truth, a perception filtered through a lens of deep-seated cultural and psychological influences. The beast becomes a psychological Rorschach test projected onto the moor, revealing our innate fear of the dark and the wild, and our timeless fascination with the monster just beyond the firelight. The shadow of the beast soon slipped the moor's boundaries, becoming a story too compelling to remain local. National newspapers seized upon the mystery, transforming it from a Cornish curiosity into a British sensation. Headlines screamed about the phantom cat stalking the countryside, each article amplifying the legend for an audience hungry for a real-life monster story. This was not just news, it was entertainment, a thrilling narrative that played out against the familiar rolling hills of England itself. The beast had become a media star, its elusive nature only adding to its appeal. Television producers quickly followed, sending film crews armed with powerful lights and long-lens cameras into the fog. Documentaries presented the eyewitness accounts with dramatic narration, analyzing the grainy footage and interviewing both staunch believers and skeptical scientists. These programs did not just report on the mystery, they actively participated in it, framing the search for the beast as a modern-day adventure. Each broadcast introduced the legend to millions of new viewers, embedding the image of the sleek, black cat into the national consciousness. The creature was no longer just a potential animal. It was a character in a nationwide drama, a symbol of the wild that still persisted in an increasingly tame world. This media saturation ensured the beast's survival far more effectively than any single piece of physical evidence ever could. The story was simply too good to let die. Authors penned entire books dedicated to the case, compiling sightings and theories, while the beast even made a surprising leap into the world of video games, appearing as a cryptic enemy or a legendary creature to be hunted in virtual landscapes. This cross-platform journey cemented its status as a true icon of modern folklore. The media did not just report on the beast of Bodmin-Moor, it became the very ecosystem that sustained it, feeding the public's fascination and ensuring that every new rustle in the gorse would be met with a fresh wave of stories, keeping the legend alive and prowling through our collective imagination. A legend, it turns out, can be a powerful economic engine. While the official investigators were filing their reports, the local community of Bodmin-Moor was discovering a different kind of evidence, one measured not in plaster casts but in pounds and pence. The beast of Bodmin-Moor quickly became more than a mystery. It became a brand, and that brand brought a surge of visitors to a region that had long relied on traditional, and often struggling, industries like farming and mining. Suddenly, people were not just coming for the rugged scenery, they were coming with a purpose, to catch a glimpse of the phantom cat for themselves. This influx of curious tourists created a new and unexpected revenue stream, a tangible benefit born from an intangible fear. Local shops quickly capitalized on the phenomenon, stocking their shelves with beast-themed merchandise. You could buy a postcard with a snarling panther superimposed over a misty tor, a t-shirt declaring I survived the beast of Bodmin, or a cuddly black plush toy version of the very creature that was supposedly terrorizing the countryside. Pubs and cafes saw their business boom as visitors stopped in for a meal and to swap stories with the locals, hoping for a first-hand account. The creature was no longer just a predator in the fields. It was a mascot on a coffee mug, and its image was everywhere. This commercial transformation was a masterclass in leveraging local lore. Entrepreneurs did not need to invent a tourist attraction. They simply had to package the one that was already prowling the public imagination. The legend provided a unique selling point that set Bodmin-Moor apart from every other beautiful, windswept landscape in Britain. It offered an adventure, a chance to step into a real-life mystery, and visitors were more than willing to pay for the experience. The beast had become a valuable asset, a phantom that paid very real dividends. This commercial embrace gave rise to a new kind of local expert, the beast tour guide. Enterprising individuals began offering guided walks and nighttime vigils, leading groups of hopeful tourists into the very heart of the mystery. Armed with powerful spotlights and a wealth of local knowledge, these guides would recount the most famous sightings, point out locations of suspected attacks, and listen intently with their groups for any unusual sound in the darkness. These tours were not just walks, they were immersive theatrical experiences, blending storytelling with the genuine, spine-tingling atmosphere of the moor after dark. For the price of a ticket, you could spend an evening hunting for a legend, and even if the beast never appeared, the thrill of the chase was a product in itself. The economic impact was direct and meaningful, putting money into the pockets of guides, drivers, and accommodation providers. A story that began with farmers fearing for their livestock had evolved into a sustainable form of ecotourism, proving that a community could thrive alongside its most famous and elusive resident. The beast of Bodmin-Moor is far from alone in the shadows. It stands as a proud, if elusive, member of a global family of mysteries known as cryptids, those animals whose existence is suggested but not yet recognized by mainstream science. Think of the Loch Ness Monster, the long-necked leviathan said to inhabit a deep Scottish loch, or Bigfoot, the giant, hairy hominid reported in the forests of North America. On the surface, these creatures seem wildly different: a sea serpent, a giant ape, and a phantom cat. Yet the stories of their existence follow an almost identical blueprint, a pattern that reveals less about the creatures themselves and more about our own relationship with the unknown. Each legend typically ignites from a kernel of a credible sighting, often from a local person intimately familiar with their environment. Just as the Bodmin farmer's account gave the beast its name, the famous surgeon's photograph of 1934 gave Nessie a specific, iconic form that captured the world's imagination. These initial reports provide a template, a shape that all future witnesses are then subconsciously primed to see. The evidence that follows is invariably tantalizing yet perpetually inconclusive. For every blurry video of a shape in Loch Ness, there is a shaky film of Bigfoot striding through a California forest. For every plaster cast of a large, unidentifiable paw print on Bodmin-Moor, there is a plaster cast of a massive, human-like footprint from the Pacific Northwest. This evidence exists in a frustrating gray area, compelling enough to fuel belief, but never clear enough to satisfy scientific scrutiny. It is a dance of revelation and retreat, where the proof is always just one step ahead, forever out of focus. The official responses also follow a predictable path. Governments and scientific institutions, from the British Ministry to the American National Park Service, inevitably launch investigations. Their conclusions are almost always the same: a polite but firm dismissal due to a lack of verifiable physical evidence. A carcass, a clear photograph, a DNA sample. These are the demanded standards, and the cryptids never seem to oblige. This official closure, however, never kills the legend. In fact, it often strengthens it. The dismissal is seen not as a refutation, but as a cover-up, an institutional failure of imagination, or a deliberate attempt to avoid panic. The believers and the skeptics then retreat to their respective corners, each armed with the same ambiguous evidence interpreted in completely opposite ways. The local community, meanwhile, often finds a unique identity and economic vitality intertwined with their mysterious resident. The town of Drumnadrochit on the shores of Loch Ness is built entirely around the monster tourism industry, just as the Beast of Bodmin became a lucrative brand for Cornish shops and tour guides. The cryptid becomes more than a potential animal. It becomes a symbol of local pride and a source of income, ensuring the community itself has a vested interest in keeping the story alive. This global pattern suggests that these creatures are not merely biological puzzles waiting to be solved. They are cultural phenomena, modern myths that fulfill a deep, human need for wonder. They represent the last wild places on our maps, the final blank spaces where something incredible might still be hiding. In a world that feels increasingly explored and explained, cryptids like the Beast of Bodmin-Moor give us permission to believe that magic and mystery are still possible, that the world is not yet fully tamed. They are the guardians of our imagination, and their greatest power lies not in being found, but in forever being sought. The fear is a cold, immediate thing that bypasses all logic. For a farmer named John Butler, that fear became real on a damp morning in 1998. He was out checking his flock near the village of Altarnan when he saw it, a creature of such impossible size and shape that it froze him in his tracks. It was black, the color of wet slate, and it moved with a fluid, muscular grace along the far edge of his field. It was not a dog, not a fox, nothing he had ever seen in his 50 years on that land. The animal turned its head, and for a single heart-stopping moment, its yellow eyes locked with his. There was no fear in that gaze, only a calm, predatory assessment. Then it simply melted into the dense bracken, leaving no sound behind but the frantic beating of John's own heart. He stood there for a long time, the image of those eyes burned into his memory, a quiet certainty settling over him that the wild held secrets he would never understand. Years later, a mother of two, Sarah Jenkins, had a different kind of encounter, one that felt intensely personal and invasive. She was driving home along a narrow moorland road just after dusk, her children dozing in the back seat. As she rounded a bend, her headlights swept across a large, low-slung shape crouched in the middle of the road. It was bigger than any dog, with a long, thick tail that twitched once. It was devouring something, a rabbit or a pheasant, and as the light hit it, the creature lifted its head. Its muzzle was dark and wet. It did not startle or run. It simply stared back at her with a chilling indifference, as if she were the intruder. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She remembers the sheer bulk of its shoulders, the way the light defined its powerful form. After what felt like an eternity, it turned and bounded into the darkness with an effortless, springing gait. She drove home in a daze, checking her rear-view mirror the entire way, the safety of her own car feeling suddenly very thin. Then there is the testimony of a retired police officer, a man trained in observation and skepticism. In 2003, he was walking his own dog near the Jamaica Inn, a place famous for its own ghost stories. The evening was clear, the light fading fast. His dog, a sturdy Labrador, suddenly stiffened, its hackles rising in a sharp ridge along its back. A low, guttural growl rumbled from its throat. The officer followed its gaze and saw a large, black cat-like creature emerge from a copse of trees about 100 yards away. It moved with a purposeful, unhurried stride, its body flowing over the uneven ground. He noted its size, estimating it to be nearly 4 feet long, excluding the tail. It was utterly silent. He watched, his professional mind cataloging every detail, until it disappeared behind a granite tor. He reported the sighting not to the press, but to a dedicated research group, his statement precise and unemotional. For him, it was not a matter of belief. It was a simple fact, something he had witnessed with his own eyes, an anomaly that his training could not explain away. Each of these accounts, and the hundreds like them, share a common core. They describe a moment where the ordinary world splits open, revealing something raw and ancient lurking just beneath the surface. The witnesses are not seeking fame. Most avoid the spotlight entirely. They are often left with a profound sense of unease, a feeling that the landscape they thought they knew is merely a facade. The encounter lasts only seconds, but the memory endures for a lifetime, a vivid scar on their perception of reality. These are not just stories, they are personal histories, fragments of experience that form the living, breathing heart of the mystery. They force us to ask what is more real, the official report filed away in an archive, or the cold dread witnessed by a farmer in his own field. Their testimony carries a unique weight, forged from a lifetime of working that same soil. When a farmer on Bodmin-Moor reports a loss, it is not a matter of fleeting curiosity, but a direct blow to their livelihood and a violation of the land they know intimately. These are men and women who can identify every fox den on their property, distinguish between the tracks of a badger and an otter, and recognize the specific cry of a lamb in distress from half a mile away. Their understanding of the local fauna is not theoretical, it is practical and essential. So when they state, with unwavering conviction, that a particular kill was not the work of any known predator, their words demand attention. The evidence they present is often gruesome, written in the language of the land itself. They point to sheep discovered with their throats precisely punctured, a method that suggests a powerful, single bite designed to suffocate, rather than the ragged tearing typical of a dog attack. They note carcasses that have been meticulously cleaned, with the internal organs consumed but large sections of meat left untouched, a behavior sometimes associated with big cats that cache their prey for later. Perhaps most unsettling are the accounts of full-grown cows and ponies found with deep, parallel claw marks raked across their flanks, wounds that imply a creature large and strong enough to challenge an animal many times its size. The patterns repeat, forming a grim consistency that defies easy explanation by the usual suspects. A pack of feral dogs might bring down a sheep, but they tend to feed messily and in a frenzy, leaving a scene of scattered remains. A fox might take a lamb, but it lacks the sheer power to dispatch a healthy ewe with such surgical efficiency. For the farmer, these anomalies are not just puzzles, they are personal. The financial loss is tangible, but so too is the psychological impact, the feeling that an unpredictable and superior predator has invaded their domain. Their fences, built to contain livestock, suddenly feel flimsy. The familiar landscape they manage by day transforms into an alien hunting ground by night. This intimate connection to the consequences makes their testimony so compelling. It is grounded not in a desire for mystery, but in the hard, cold reality of a broken fence line and a lifeless animal. Their certainty stems from a deep, visceral knowledge that something on the moor has changed, and that the old rules no longer apply. The digital age brought a new hunter to the moors, one that never blinks. Motion sensor trail cameras, silent and patient, have been strapped to trees and hidden among the gorse by research groups and curious individuals determined to capture the beast in high definition. These devices operate on a simple promise: to record anything that moves day or night, offering a continuous, unbiased vigil over the landscape. The moor is now watched by dozens of these electronic eyes, each one a potential witness. Yet, for all their technological advantage, their galleries are filled with a predictable cast of characters: roe deer stepping delicately through the heather, badgers snuffling along their nightly routes, and the occasional lost hiker. The beast, it seems, is a ghost in the machine, adept at avoiding the very fields of view designed to trap it. This consistent failure is, in itself, a peculiar form of evidence. How does an animal that is supposedly a physical, biological entity possess such an uncanny ability to evade detection in its own core territory? It suggests either a level of intelligence and stealth that borders on the supernatural, or a profound understanding of the land that allows it to move through the gaps in our technological net. The cameras see everything, it seems, except for the one thing they are looking for. Alongside the silent watch of cameras, a more microscopic hunt began. Enthusiasts and scientific teams started collecting what they considered the most promising evidence of all: potential biological samples. Tufts of coarse black fur found snagged on barbed wire, mysterious droppings, or scat, found on isolated trails, and even soil from areas where a large animal was reported to have bedded down. These samples were no longer just examined under a microscope. They were sent for sophisticated DNA analysis, a process that can identify an animal from the tiniest fragment of genetic code. The promise was intoxicating: a scientific silver bullet that could end the debate forever. A single verifiable DNA match to a leopard, a puma, or even a lynx would rewrite the natural history of Britain overnight. The results, however, have been a masterclass in frustration. Time and again, the analysis returns the same mundane answers. A black fur belongs to a domestic dog or a Scottish blackface sheep. The scat is from a badger or a fox. The soil reveals nothing but the expected local flora and fauna. This relentless return to the ordinary is a powerful argument for the skeptics, who see it as definitive proof that no exotic DNA is present. Yet believers offer a different interpretation. They argue that a single, elusive predator would not be shedding fur and leaving droppings with the same frequency as a common badger. Its very elusiveness means its biological traces are incredibly rare and easily missed or contaminated. They also propose a more unsettling idea: that perhaps the creature's DNA is not in any standard database to begin with, that it represents an unknown hybrid or a population so isolated its genetic signature is unfamiliar to science. The technology is here, but the conclusive sample remains as elusive as the creature itself. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and pure obsession, organized groups have taken the hunt to a new level. These are not casual tourists with cameras, but dedicated individuals who spend their weekends and holidays conducting systematic searches of the moor. They work in teams, coordinating their efforts across vast areas, using grids and advanced tracking techniques. They employ thermal imaging scopes to pierce the night, hoping to spot a heat signature that does not belong to a deer or a human. They analyze the terrain for signs of large dens or lairs in the most inaccessible valleys. Their dedication is immense, a testament to the powerful grip the legend holds. Yet, despite their methodical approach and high-tech gear, the outcome is always the same. They find intriguing marks that could be scratches on a tree. They document paw prints that are tantalizingly large but ultimately inconclusive. They hear unidentifiable cries echoing in the darkness. They return with hard drives full of footage and memory cards packed with data, but never with the one piece of evidence that would stand up in a court of science. The beast continues to be a master of evasion, a shadow that slips through the cracks of even the most determined and well-equipped search. This persistent failure raises a profound question. Is the proof so elusive because the creature is miraculously clever, or because we are hunting for something that cannot be caught by a camera or contained in a test tube? This fundamental divide separates those who trust only in physical proof from those who trust the evidence of their own eyes. On one side, the skeptics wield the powerful weapon of scientific rigor. They argue that in an age of high-resolution cameras carried in every pocket, the continued absence of a single clear, unambiguous photograph is deafening. Where is the carcass, they ask? If a population of large cats has lived and died on the moor for decades, why has no hunter, no walker, no farmer ever stumbled upon the bones of one? The vastness of the landscape is not a sufficient explanation for this total lack of physical remains. They point to the official government investigations that found no verifiable evidence, and to the laboratory results that identified every sample of fur and scat as belonging to common native animals. For the skeptic, the case is simple. Without a body, a clear photo, or a DNA match, the beast remains a compelling story, but a story nonetheless, a classic example of how folklore and psychology can create a powerful collective illusion. They see a pattern of misidentification, where known animals like large black dogs, feral cats, and even wild boar are transformed into a phantom panther by a brain preconditioned by legend. The true mystery, they conclude, is not a biological one, but a psychological one, revealing how easily we can convince ourselves of the unbelievable. Yet across this intellectual chasm, the believers stand firm on the bedrock of personal experience. Their argument is not built in a laboratory, but in the damp, misty fields of the moor itself. They counter that the sheer volume and consistency of eyewitness reports, spanning decades and involving hundreds of people from all walks of life, cannot be so easily dismissed as mass hysteria. These are police officers, farmers, and doctors, credible individuals with nothing to gain and often a great deal of ridicule to lose by coming forward. How could so many independent people, many of whom had never heard of the beast before their encounter, all describe the same specific animal with the same sleek, black form, powerful shoulders, and piercing eyes? For them, this chorus of testimony is evidence in itself, a data set too large and too coherent to ignore. They argue that the moor's 150 square miles are not just vast, they are a labyrinth of deep, hidden valleys, ancient woodlands, and abandoned mine shafts, a terrain that could easily conceal a small, elusive, and intelligent population of predators. A big cat's entire survival strategy is based on stealth, on seeing without being seen. The failure of trail cameras does not prove its non-existence, they say, but rather confirms the creature's mastery of its environment. The believers ask a simple, profound question. Is it more likely that every single witness over 40 years is mistaken, or that one clever species of animal is successfully hiding in the last wild place in southern England? This is not a debate that will be settled by a new piece of data, for every piece is instantly claimed by both sides. It is a clash of worldviews, a struggle between the map of the known world and the uncharted territory of the possible. That phantom cat has woven itself into the very identity of Cornwall, becoming far more than a mere story. It is a shared cultural touchstone, a point of local pride that distinguishes this community from any other in Britain. In pubs and at village fetes, the tale is recounted not with fear, but with a sense of ownership, a knowing smile that suggests the moor holds its secrets close. Parents point to the misty tors and tell their children about the beast, passing down a modern legend that feels as ancient as the granite beneath their feet. This is not just a monster story, it is a piece of local heritage, a narrative that binds the community together through a common, thrilling mystery. The creature has become an unofficial mascot, a symbol of the region's wild and untamable spirit. It represents a Cornwall that refuses to be fully mapped or understood, a place where nature still holds the upper hand. This shared narrative fosters a unique form of local pride. While outsiders might see a silly superstition, the people of Bodmin Moor understand it as part of their home's character, a testament to the enduring power and mystery of their landscape. The legend provides a common ground for conversation between lifelong farmers and newly arrived residents, a story that everyone can share and interpret in their own way. It creates a sense of place that is richer and more layered than any guidebook could capture. The beast is a reminder that they live in a location capable of generating its own myths, a place where the ordinary world is still thin enough to let the extraordinary slip through. This deep integration into the local psyche ensures the story's longevity. It is no longer just about a possible animal. It is about the soul of the moor itself and the community that calls it home. The legend's true power lies in its ability to transform a landscape into a living character, and a community into the custodians of its greatest secret. The Phantom Cat of Bodmin is not a solitary anomaly, but one star in a constellation of British mysteries. From the dense woodlands of Surrey to the sweeping hills of Exmoor, similar creatures have been reported for decades, each with its own local name and legend. The Surrey puma was one of the first to capture the public's attention, with a wave of sightings beginning in the 1960s. People described a tawny, puma-like animal slinking through the commuter belt countryside, a startling juxtaposition of the wild and the suburban. Then there is the Beast of Exmoor, a creature blamed for the deaths of hundreds of livestock in the 1980s, prompting such concern that the Royal Marines were even deployed in a clandestine operation to hunt it down. They reported no success, adding another layer of official intrigue to the tale. These are not isolated stories. In the Scottish Highlands, the Kellas cat, a strange, large black feline, was actually shot and killed in the 1980s, with genetic analysis later confirming it was a unique hybrid between a domestic cat and a wildcat. Further north, the so-called alien big cats, or a BCS, of Scotland continue to be reported, from panther-like forms in the cairngorms to lynx-like creatures in the Great Glen. Even the industrial heartlands are not immune, with the Pennines and the forests of Kent and Sussex all having their own resident phantom, feline legends. This nationwide pattern is too consistent and too widespread to be dismissed as mere coincidence. It suggests that whatever is happening on Bodmin Moor is part of a much larger and deeply puzzling national phenomenon. The descriptions remain eerily similar across the entire country. A large, cat-like predator, most often black or dark brown, exhibiting elusive, nocturnal behavior and an uncanny ability to avoid capture. If this were just one local story, we could perhaps attribute it to a unique set of circumstances, a perfect storm of folklore and misidentification. But when the same story is being told from Cornwall to Caithness, it forces us to consider a bigger picture. Could there be multiple points of origin for these animals, a scattered population of survivors and their descendants from that era of exotic pet releases? Or does this map of sightings reveal something even more profound about the British landscape itself, and our relationship with the wild spaces we thought we had long since tamed? The true mystery of the Beast of Bodmin Moor may not be confined by its granite valleys, but may instead be a single chapter in a much stranger and far older national story. Perhaps the most profound truth about the beast is that it reflects our own collective anxieties back at us. This phantom cat is far more than a potential animal. It is a powerful cultural symbol, a creature born from our deepest fears about the wild and the unknown. For centuries, we have worked to tame the land, to fence it, farm it, and map its every contour. Yet places like Bodmin-Moor resist this control, remaining stubbornly untamed. The beast embodies that residual wildness, a constant reminder that just beyond the edge of the village, beyond the last streetlight, the ancient world still holds sway. It represents the part of nature that we can never fully domesticate, a lurking, intelligent force that observes our ordered lives from the shadows, indifferent to our plans. This touches a primal nerve, the fear that our dominion over the natural world is only an illusion, and that the wild can reclaim its territory at any moment. The creature also personifies our anxiety about the unknown. In an age of satellites and search engines, we are uncomfortable with unresolved mysteries. We demand answers, and the beast steadfastly refuses to provide them. It thrives in the liminal space between fact and folklore, a permanent question mark that defies our need for categorization. This elusiveness is deeply unsettling because it challenges our modern conviction that everything can be known, measured, and explained. The beast forces us to confront the uncomfortable idea that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, that some shadows will always remain just beyond the reach of our understanding. But could this phantom also be a manifestation of a deeper, more poignant guilt, a form of ecological grief? We live in the wake of countless extinctions, in a world we have profoundly altered. The Eurasian lynx, a native predator, was erased from this landscape by human hands long ago. Is the beast of Bodmin-Moor a spectral attempt to fill that empty niche, a subconscious projection of our longing for a wilder, more complete Britain? Does it represent a hidden hope that a piece of that lost world might have survived, or a guilty acknowledgement that we are responsible for its absence? We mourn the predators we destroyed, and in our collective imagination, we conjure a new one to take their place, a sleek, black symbol of the ecological balance we disrupted. The beast, therefore, becomes a mirror. When we look into the mist, searching for its form, we are not just hunting for a cat. We are staring into our own unease, our fear of the untamed, our frustration with the unexplained, and our silent grief for a natural world we can never restore. So where does this leave us, with the evidence laid bare on the table? On one side rests the sheer weight of human testimony, a mountain of detailed accounts from credible individuals who have seen something they cannot explain. These are not vague stories of shadows, but consistent descriptions of a specific animal, a large black feline with a powerful build and unforgettable eyes. The argument for a flesh and blood creature is compellingly simple. We know exotic animals were kept as pets, we know the law changed, and we know at least some were released. The moor provides the perfect sanctuary, a hidden world of prey and cover. The logic feels unassailable, a chain of cause and effect that ends with a predator silently patrolling the foggy valleys. This is a clean, scientific explanation that requires no leap of faith, only an acceptance that human carelessness can have wild and lasting consequences. Yet the evidence against this tidy conclusion is equally formidable. It is an evidence of absence, a deafening silence where proof should be. In a world saturated with cameras, why is there no definitive photograph? If a population has lived and bred for decades, where are the bones, the roadkill, the kittens? The official scientific analyses return only negative results, identifying every hair and dropping as belonging to common local animals. The most promising physical evidence, the famous skull, turned out to be a discarded trophy. From a purely empirical standpoint, the case for the beast seems to dissolve upon contact, leaving behind only a residue of folklore and psychology. This is the core of the mystery, an irreconcilable conflict between two types of truth: the truth of direct, personal experience, and the truth of verifiable, repeatable data. Both cannot be correct, and yet both persist with unshakable conviction. Perhaps the most fascinating possibility lies not in choosing a side, but in accepting that the answer might be a spectrum of realities. Maybe the beast is a real, escaped big cat, a biological entity whose elusiveness is a testament to its intelligence and the moor's vastness. Or maybe it is something older, a phantom from Cornish lore that has simply taken on a new, more contemporary form to haunt our modern imaginations. It could even be a thought form, a psychic echo born from our collective fear and fascination with the wild, given just enough substance by the charged atmosphere of the land to be glimpsed for a moment before fading back into the mist. The ultimate truth of the beast of Bodmin-moor remains, like the creature itself, just out of focus. It dwells in the liminal space between fact and legend, a permanent question mark on the map of Britain. And perhaps that is exactly where it belongs. Its incredible journey has transformed a local scare into a national legend, a story that refuses to be neatly filed away as fact or fiction. The beast of Bodmin-moor is not a single entity, but a complex tapestry woven from three distinct threads. There is the thread of fact, the plausible history of escaped exotic pets, and the tantalizing, if inconclusive, physical traces left behind. Then there is the ancient thread of folklore, the deep-seated myths of the puka and phantom hounds that give the mystery its timeless, eerie resonance. And finally, there is the vibrant thread of human psychology, our innate need to see patterns in the mist and to believe that wild, untamable magic still exists in our modern world. This is the true story, a legend that lives in the space between what we can prove and what we feel in our bones when we stand alone on that vast, windswept landscape. It is a cultural icon born from our deepest fears and our most profound sense of wonder. So, as the mist once again settles over the granite tors, we are left with one final, lingering question that only you can answer. What do you believe is the true nature of the beast? Is it a flesh and blood survivor, a spectral guardian, or a phantom born from our collective imagination? Share your own theories in the comments below, and subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the world's greatest unsolved mysteries.